Welcome to the I Work For Him podcast. I'm Michael Miracle, producer of the I Work For Him radio program, the voice of the faith and work movement. Our mission is to transform the workplace of every Christian into a mission field. What does that look like in your workplace? Let's find out right now.
Hey, welcome to I Work For Him, the mouthpiece for the faith and work movement. We're your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg.
Good evening, everybody. It's been a while since we've been out here on Facebook Live, so glad to have you with us this evening as you're probably getting ready for dinner or whatever the end of your day might look like. You know, I just want to take a minute to highlight something that's very exciting that is happening on Monday, Jim, and that is the launch of the She Works For Him podcast.
Wow.
So
awesome.
If you have not yet, follow She Works For Him on Facebook for She Works For Him. She works the number 4, him. And look at that, Jim's even changing the background for me.
I like it.
So that is just an exciting thing. We are already on Apple Podcast, and we have lots of ways for you to listen. So just want to give you that heads up. We also are doing a YouTube channel there as well. So She Works For Him, wherever you like to engage. And we'll start having those conversations, connecting the Christian working woman to God, resources, and one another.
That's She Works, the number 4, him.com. All right, now, the manufacturing world is a little rough and tumble. The floors aren't always clean, and the conversations could be a little rough too. But what do we know about the manufacturing workforce in America? They're diehard, loyal Americans who work hard and sweat hard to make parts, pieces, and equipment made right here in the United States of America. So where does Jesus fit into the manufacturing world? Dee Barnes is here to tell her story of being the CEO of Evans Tool & Die in Conyers, Georgia, and how Jesus changed her life. It impacts her manufacturing company every day. Dee is also going to tell us about a very special event that she is hosting that's related to her life before Jesus. Dee Barnes, welcome to I Work For Him.
Thank you.
You know, Dee, we're going to talk about how you connect your faith to your work as the CEO of Evans Tool & Die and what that looks like on a daily basis. But first, can you tell us why and how you became a Jesus follower?
Okay, I'm gonna say it real simply. As my life was in really a sexual sin world of heterosexual and homosexual, I began to be convicted of the lifestyle I was living as a lesbian. When I came to Jesus, and primarily because a girl that was with me in the lesbian lifestyle pointed out Romans 1 to me and said, "Hey, did you know that what we're doing is wrong?" And I said, "Well, no, not really." And she said, "It says so in Romans 1. So I looked up Romans 1, and sure enough, it said that. And I didn't really argue with what it said. I just took it as it was written. And as soon as, you take the word of God for what it says, it begins to do what it's supposed to do, which is convict your heart. And that was the beginning of conviction for me. And then I just began to seek out God and what did he really say. And I was always known of Jesus and said I was a Christian, but I really was never born again and a Jesus follower. So with that, I just began to pursue the Lord. It was probably about 6 months of really the Lord pulling me towards himself, his love drawing me and me following, and at the same time living in the lifestyle I was still in. And in about 6 months' time, I found myself surrendering completely to the Lord. And that is really when I got born again. And that, spirit man was born again, but I had a lot of baggage that needed dealing with, so to speak. And so that began my journey of getting healing and walking out of homosexuality. And that was a quick story, quick outline of how I came to know Jesus.
Well, and it's pretty amazing that you had that conversation and actually even started the journey of seeing what that really meant. And I know we're going to get into that a little bit more later as we talk about something that you have coming up that we want our listeners to know about. Fast forward, like where did your career fit into all of that? And what is your story that led you to ultimately now you're the CEO of Evans Tool & Die?
So my family started Evans Tool & Die, Evans Metal Stamping, in 1948. It was my grandfather, which is my mom's dad. And I'd always, growing up, wanted to work at Evans. That was what I just knew that's what I wanted to do. Didn't know exactly what role I'd play, but all summers I worked here, usually in the office. And in college, I wanted to take accounting courses so I could come back and work at Evans. And I think when I was 21, I said, I'm going to be president and run the business someday. That's what I wanted to do.
Wow.
That was before Jesus. And so then when I came to know the Lord, I was a controller at Evans at that point. So I had, my business world too. And My second generation father and uncles were running the business, and grandfather all throughout this time. And then I got born again, and my goals and desires changed a lot. It was no longer about what career I could have. It was about family and marriage and having children. And as I was raising my children, I didn't want to work all the time. So I thought, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I a little bit worked my way out of the business where I could not have to be here every day. And then ministry started over this period of years, maybe about 10 years time before I came back to the business as CEO. So I didn't really intend on coming back in 2011 when the second generation approached me about running the business. I really thought I was going to just be doing ministry full time, but God had other plans, and I decided to just really try it again and say, okay, I'm just going to come back and see if this is what I'm supposed to do. And after a lot of prayer, and my husband was also in the business at this point, and after 2 weeks of coming back to work, I realized it. I hit the ground running, and it was like I'd never left. And I knew that it was God, because there's no way I was doing that without God really changing my heart and putting me in the role that I had originally desired to do. So It's amazing how God gives us the desires of our heart. That was his desire and plan he put in me. I just didn't realize it. So that's been 10 years of being CEO so far, and amazing journey even in that 10 years time.
And I want to point out something that you just said, and we're going to come back to it in a little bit, but you talked about how you were in ministry and then you came back to work. But one of the things I want our listeners and the people that are watching right now to hear, Dee, is that ultimately you're in ministry every day.
Absolutely.
Right? And you recognize that.
Work is ministry.
Exactly. So I just want to tie those connections. We'll come back to that in a little bit, but I don't want that to be missed, because that is a lot of us disconnect that still. And this is all about connecting that together. So talk about, as a Christian working woman, is there somewhere that you go for encouragement to help you in living out your faith at your work?
Yes, I think, one of those personally is our own personal small groups that we're a part of, just throughout our church. But really being a part of some CEO roundtables has really encouraged me.
Like which ones?
Well, I've been a part of a couple of them. So TGIF, which is the CEO roundtable with that, has been just super good with Oz Hillman. Amazing time there. And then some other Pinnacle Forum. Been with Pinnacle Forum and just places like that. Over the 10 years, I've been a part of different ones, and some were completely Christian and some were not, but had a lot of Christian folks there. So I think just different, as many parts of just peer groups I could find, I've been just in and out of some of those, then it's really been helpful.
We just want to make sure you plugged all our friends out there, because if there's ministries that people should connect with, all right, you mentioned TGIF with Oz Hillman, he's got his roundtables, and Pinnacle Forum, and were you in a convene group too at one time?
I'm not sure. Actually, it's been so long. I don't think I was plugged in really well at the time. It might have been the early beginning of my career as CEO, and I was there, but I don't think not for a long period of time.
Hey, we're talking tonight with Dee Barnes. She's the CEO of Evans Tool and Die in Conyers, Georgia. She really wants you to check out this website that is all about her ministry, hiswonderfulworks.com, hiswonderfulworks.com. Please make sure you do that. Let's face it, there's only so much you can accomplish in a day, right?
As a busy leader, countless distractions are vying for your time. And making it harder is that these distractions are often important things, but maybe not the best use of your time or passions.
You need help living out your God-given purpose, and thankfully, our friends at Belay offer just that.
Belay, an innovative staffing solution with over 10 years of experience, has successfully matched thousands of organizations with part-time virtual assistants, bookkeepers, and social media strategists.
With Belay's help, you can delegate to someone who has the skills to execute faster and more efficiently, leaving you to do what only you can do. Fulfill your purpose and be the faithful steward you are called to be.
To learn more, just text 4HIM to 55123. Again, that's the number 4HIM to 55123.
Dee, as we talk this evening, let's talk a little bit more about Evans Tool and Die. How many employees do you have there?
We have about 63 employees currently.
Wow, that's quite a big church that you've got there. How do they know that you're a Jesus follower?
I think the answer would be a pretty bold yes. I would be surprised if they didn't know that. I think they do.
So what kinds of things do you do in your organization with your employees to help them know about your faith, either directly or indirectly, and what kind of impact that's able to have on them?
Well, I personally look for opportunities to pray with my employees. So we have plant employees, right? Tool and die makers, metal stamping, press operators, from highly skilled engineers to lower skilled, really just press operators that are out there, and our office folks as well. And I personally look for opportunities to pray with everyone. Especially if they're going through something, I will offer to pray with them. I'll stop and pray with them right there. Sometimes in my office, sometimes, right wherever, if I feel like they're comfortable with that, and I'll offer to pray with them. But I look for those opportunities to impact their life in any way I can. And, most recently during COVID, I will call them and ask, can I come to their house to pray for them, at the hospital to pray for them, whatever opportunity that they are going through. I look for that to pray for them, and for them to see whether they are Christian believers or not. I just still ask if they're open to praying, and usually they are. It's not even if they're not saying that they're Christian. So that's one thing, and the other is just I also send text messages if they're where they are, if they're at home sick, and just making sure that they're okay. And that's everybody here. That's all of the employees. Generosity is one of our core values stated. And I think it first starts with the employees. So I try my best to make sure that we start with the employees. If they're in need, if they need a car, some unexpected expenses are happening, we're trying to help them first before we help other folks outside of the business. So I hope that says a lot about.
But, it does.
But you're one person, and there's 60. You said 60 plus people working for you, and during COVID, they couldn't do their job from home because they don't have tool and die equipment at their house.
Right.
Although some of them may have tool and die equipment. So how do you make sure that your management team, your executive team, the team that's your supervisory team, your line teams, how do you make sure that they're passing on that ministry to you at the same time?
Well, so in the HR department, they're the lead spokesman for what's happening with employees, and texting them and letting us executive team know how the person's doing. And certainly if the person is open to sharing, what they're going through, especially during COVID, with their approval, and it goes out to, first our executive team, then our management team, and then I'll pick that up and I'll just text them personally if I can. And then if I'm hearing how they're doing, praying, if I know it's starting to get critical, I'll call and text and say, hey, are you open to me coming to your house to pray for you? And I will go there and pray for them. And whether that's in the hospital, if I can get in, or at their house. So we just keep in touch, and we have a lot of believers here that are open with their faith, and they step up, and I just see them growing as well. And the more bold that I can be in my faith, and not shying back about praying for people. And, we'll pray in the plant. I close every plant meeting with prayer, and just but if there's specific things, an example might be, we were having trouble getting material in, and we needed God to bring material. So, out in front of the whole plant, we're going to ask God for material and watch him bring that material to us. And then I'm asking the managers, did God answer the prayer yet? Where's the material until it comes in? And then, we celebrate, look what God did. And that goes for any issue that we have.
What do you mean you're having a hard time getting material in? We know the plywood's wicked expensive, but what do you mean you're having a hard time getting material?
Yeah, raw material metal is hard to find, and certain times you can't find it, or it's like, lead time, and then we find it and you can't find a truck line to deliver it. We'd pray for material to come in. It would come in, we'd get the parts made, and then couldn't find a truck to go deliver it because there were just different reasons. So then our prayer would change to send us a truck line to deliver this material.
Wow.
And God would do it. They're just testimony after testimony, encourage them to give testimony. And at our devotion, we have devotion every Wednesday, where pastors come in, and employees can ask their pastor to come and pray, be a part of the devotion. It's a 20-minute devotion, and the plan is you can come to devotion or you can not come to devotion during that break time. No, it's just open, and we pray there really specifically for prayer needs and give testimony about what God's done, and employees will come up and give testimony, and we just have an atmosphere of testifying what God's done. And the more we do that, the more I see testimony, and I see people who typically wouldn't say, hey, look what God did. Now they're saying, wow, look what God did in this. They're seeing God move. And that's been really neat.
So we're talking this evening, if you've just joined us, with Dee Barnes, the CEO of Evans Tool and Die. And one of the things that I think is amazing, Dee, as we talk about this, is that I think a lot of people are like, really? You're doing that, and you're being well received. And I love hearing that testimony. So I also want to point out that we have tagged in the Facebook Live His Wonderful Works as a Facebook page, so people can go there as we talk about your event coming up, that we're just kind of letting people know this is going to be something we're going to talk about. You can find out the details by going to that link. So Dee, one of the things that I'm just really curious for myself and for our listeners, when you pray at the end of meetings, when you share these testimonies, like what kind of response are you actually getting from your employees?
Well, because of COVID, we have a plant meeting out in the warehouse, right? So everybody's spread out. We're distanced. I have a mic and speakers, and everybody's just out there, right? And I don't know. I mean, I just say, hey, I'm going to pray like I always do at the end of the meeting, and everybody bows their head and we pray, and nobody says anything, different, like, oh no.
Well, they don't throw anything at you either, right?
Yeah, they don't throw anything. And I think they've seen the genuineness of this heartfelt asking God to direct us. And we've been through some super challenging times with not having enough business, not having enough hours, competing with the manufacturing market overseas has been difficult over these years. And so they know, that our hope is in the Lord, and I think they've seen it. They've seen God answer these prayers, and so I don't know. I mean, I guess it's been a good response. Nobody's left.
That's awesome. What an amazing thing for your employees to know that you're steadfast in that, and that you're trustworthy. You're being incredibly transparent about what God's been doing in your own life.
That's right.
We're talking tonight with Dee Barnes from Evans Tool and Die in Conyers, Georgia. She really wants you to check out a special website, her ministry website, hiswonderfulworks.com, hiswonderfulworks.com.
Want to build a profitable side hustle that impacts people with truth and healing in themselves and their leadership? Then look at becoming a certified leadership coach with Giant. Giant has been in the leadership space for over 13 years and has over 500 coaches in over 127 countries. Their coaches are being hired by Fortune 500 companies and organizations like I Work for Him. Jim and I took the Giant Sherpa training under one of these great coaches to become leaders worth following. Giant gives you everything you need to start your own coaching business from scratch, like hands-on training from top-level coaches, access to an all-in-one online platform to run your entire coaching business, and you get to join a thriving community of coaches around the world. To get started, Giant is hosting a coaching business workshop to help you learn how to build a successful coaching business. This workshop is 100% free, and you can reserve your spot by going to giant.tv/I Work for Him. If you're ready to impact people and get paid to do it, go to giant.tv/I Work for Him. That's giant.tv/I Work for Him.
Dee, your conversion story is moving. Tell us about hiswonderfulworks.com.
All right. So His Wonderful Works, the name comes from Psalm 26:7 that says, I will publish with the voice of thanksgiving and tell of all your wonderful works. So that is a bit how it started, telling of the wonderful works of God, most primarily my own story, but other stories that God has transformed our life out of issues of sexuality, family, and relationships. And it all kind of intertwines. And this is both heterosexual, homosexual struggles, whether it's healing for past sexual abuse that I had in my own life and my own walk out of that, helping other people come to healing in that, a past abortion for myself and other people, getting healing for that. And how do we walk through our sexual sin, and heterosexual, homosexual, transgender, all across the board. And what I found was that through my own walk of healing and working with many others in healing ministry, realizing that the church did not really understand what was behind the brokenness, and certainly behind issues of homosexuality, and realizing that homosexual feelings are not a choice. You don't have a choice. You don't go, oh, I just want those, or I don't want them. They're just there. And they feel so real that you believe that you're born that way. And the church doesn't really understand that. Many Christians don't understand it. And so my hope was to help the church understand and equip the church to understand that there are real root reasons as to why we have those attractions. And if we can understand that, we can be more compassionate with those struggling, but we can also stand in the truth. I think for a long time, the church has been on either side, beating people over the head with the Bible, saying you need to stop sinning, or God loves everybody, let's just not say anything. And somewhere in the middle is grace and truth that says God did not create you homosexual, but he loves you so much that he would walk you out of that. And out of my own life, we've gathered so many testimonies of God transforming people's lives. And that's what the ministry does. We'll help equip the church, help those that need prayer and want to follow after healing. We help them get into places where they need to be, do some lay counseling, and stay connected all across the country with other ministries that can bring help as well.
So tell us what you're seeing God do through that ministry. What are the results?
Primarily hope for people, hope for the ones struggling with same-sex attraction that don't want to have that, are struggling with their gender issues. We bring hope to them that this is possible. You may not see it right now, but it is possible to walk this out, and we're living proof of that. So I think in our testimonies, we give validity to God's truth and bring hope. And we also bring hope to families and parents struggling with their children that, how do we pray for them? Are they really born that way? Should we embrace that? And out of our own stories, we bring hope and healing and freedom to the church and individuals, families. That's what I primarily see God doing is restoring people and giving them hope that not to give up in prayer and pursue God.
Would your website, hiswonderfulworks.com, be a great resource for listeners who want to love on someone who is LGBTQ?
Absolutely. We have lots of videos, stories, and help to just encouragement, but also a resource page that has a lot of resources across the country. And these are books, videos, testimonies. What we find a lot of times, people will contact us and they have a relative in a different state. So we're a part of a lot of networks that give you ministry support in different states. And we do phone calls and just all kinds of things, trying to help people to get, obviously we're not full-time counselors, but we help people get to the places, discipleship programs that really help people walk out of brokenness in their relationships.
What I love about what you're saying is that something we've been saying for years in even our own life is that no one can refute the testimony of the journey that you've been on, that God has taken you through. So, Dee, you're sharing firsthand your testimony and what God has done in your life and the other stories and everything that are on your website. And that is just such a beautiful place for people to see real life happening. You have an event coming up on September 11th, the Amazing Love event. Will you tell us about it?
I would love to. We are so excited about this. This is our fourth time holding Amazing Love event, and it's usually every 2 years because it takes a while to gather all of the testimonies. But it is a full day of worship and testimony from 9 in the morning till 6 in the evening. And we bring around 30 to 40 testimonies to Atlanta. And these testifiers are from all across the country. So they come and testify for 8 minutes, 8 minutes, 8 minutes. Then we have worship and all throughout the day, lots and lots of resources from all across the country. And this year, we're so excited because we have networks from all across the country, California, Colorado Springs, Florida. These are networks that have their own set of people with testimonies. And primarily, they're out of all issues of sexuality. So heterosexual addiction, addiction to pornography, homosexuality, transgender. And they're all just coming and saying, here's where we were, and God has brought us out of that. And most people don't know one person that's been transformed, much less 40. And it's just amazing to see the work and that God's done. And it just brings an atmosphere of hope and freedom. And, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And there's this prophetic voice that goes out just being there that strengthens every Christian. The event is really for every Christian because we all, whether we are directly related to that struggle, are going to have somebody that's our good friend, our family, that we're going to have to figure out how we're going to love them, but also encourage them in the truth. And so this event does that for a lot of people and also brings hope to those who are struggling.
So who should come to the event on 9/11 and where is it at?
Yeah, every Christian, I say every Christian ought to come, but certainly those who are specifically looking for hope and understanding about this issue. And I say every church leader, youth groups, because there's just the youth are inundated with the words that say you're born that way and you should just embrace it. It's even in the Christian group, right? There are a lot of Christians who say that homosexuality is fine and we should just live that out. And if someone had told me that, hey, Dee, you can live a lesbian life, love Jesus, and maybe you try to feel better to do that, they would have robbed me from everything God's given me. I mean, he has given me a family, a husband, 3 beautiful children that I do not deserve. But being, I guess, thinking that the culture says you should do that because you're going to make people feel bad if they're homosexual, they would have missed all that they were supposed to tell me. So I'm passionate about telling the truth because the destiny God had for me came from that. And at this event, there are lots and lots of resources, ministries having their resources there from all across the country to help support and equip the church and individuals. So.
You brought up an interesting point about youth groups, and you were talking about pornography and that addiction. And there's not a lot, well, from my perspective, I don't see a whole lot of stuff being talked about in that area. So this is a great resource to really kind of open the door to some of that conversation that maybe needs to happen around all of those. So is it all in person? Is it online? How can people participate? And just give them a few more of those details.
So first, we would like for you to register online, and the cost is minimal, $35, covers your lunch and all day. It's in Atlanta at the Ethiopian Evangelical Church of Atlanta. That's in Stone Mountain. And you can find all this on the website and go to the events tab and click on Amazing Love Event, and you'll see all of that. We plan to have an available stream, and I'm not sure how that's going to go out. It'd probably be just a link on the website that you could see it from a different state.
All right. And all that information's at hiswonderfulworks.com?
Yeah, it sure is.
Hiswonderfulworks.com. Last question, Dee. We've covered your story, hiswonderfulworks.com, and Evan's Tool and Die. You got a lot of people listening to the show tonight, and this will go out as a podcast and a video podcast out there. Any last thoughts for our listeners as they live out their faith at work?
Yes, I was thinking about that when we were discussing it earlier, and I thought, our ability to live out our faith outwardly for people is directly proportionate to our private intimacy with Jesus and with the Father. And when we cultivate intentionally that private intimacy with the Lord, it just overflows, right? You can't help it. You just who you are when you leave that presence of the Lord every day, and that is who you are in public. It just overflows, right? And when we're not full of the Lord, it is, maybe it's more effort than it is just happening. So it becomes, the more we grow in the Lord, the more it just is who we are. It's no different in private anywhere else than it is at work. And I have the privilege of living that out because I guess I am the CEO and nobody can tell me I can't. But I intentionally just live the same way here as I do at church.
But that's not true. Your customers could tell you, your vendors could tell you, they could tell you to pound sand. They didn't want to do business with you.
They could. You're exactly right.
But they don't. Dee Barnes, thank you so much for being on I Work For Him tonight. Thanks for sharing your story, and thanks for telling us about hiswonderfulworks.com. We're very grateful. Thank you, Dee.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to I Work For Him with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. We're Christ followers. Our workplace, it's our mission field, but ultimately, I work for Him.
Did you know that God has a calling on your life? It's true. He's called you to bring Jesus to the world. For some, that may look like a pulpit or a foreign mission field, but for most of us, it looks like a construction site, a cubicle, a hospital, or a classroom. Wherever it is that you work, live, volunteer, and invest, that is your mission field. To learn more about integrating your faith into your work and retirement, check out our books, I Work For Him, She Works For Him, and I Retire For Him by going to iworkforhim.com/bookstore.
Thank you for listening to the I Work For Him podcast with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. Please visit iworkforhim.com to learn more about connecting your faith and work, to join the I Work For Him Nation, or subscribe to our weekly blog. You can also follow us on social media at I Work For Him to stay up to date and meet our guests. If today's message spoke to you, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. Your review will launch more workplace missionaries across America. That's at I Work For Him and online, iworkforhim.com. I work the number 4him.com.